Thank you for coming tonight here in Portland. I'm Elana Freeland, the author of several books, but the most recent were the 2014 book Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth, and the 2018 book Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. Both books are available. The Under an Ionized Sky is 25, and the Chemtrails HAARP is 20. I'm writing the third book now. It'll be, I hope, the last one I'm writing in this series. And this one is on, it's on synthetic biology, but in order to cover the synthetic biology, I need to cover a whole lot of things, because this is, to my knowledge, the first time that the environment has been utterly weaponized in order to produce effects on human health and the health of the planet and its creatures. So I have to handle a lot of things in order to show just how the synthetic biology assault on all of us is going to work. And I don't even need to use the future tense, is working. Okay, so this is just something a person sent me that took a picture. This is from Mein Kampf. In the big lie, there is always a certain force of credibility, because the broad masses of a nation are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. And this is an important quote. It's attributed to Hitler, but I think it sounds a lot more like Goebbels, his propaganda minister. And this is why I've really come to the fore on this particular topic. I mean, you know my history. I was a Waldorf teacher. I gave many presentations on education. I've done a lot of things in life, a really interesting life. But this idea of the endless deception in my culture that my Romanian grandmother felt was the greatest country on earth because of how she had been persecuted in Romania, it really bothers me deep down. So I have spent a lot of time and thousands of hours and at least hundreds of books studying the problem of deception in the United States from the Cold War on. And the reason I say the Cold War is I was born in 1947, so my basic coming of age has happened within the Cold War, and therefore I'm a good person to talk about it and analyze it. So this is a valuable quote to me. I wanted to illuminate the whole earth. There is enough electricity to become a second sun. Light would appear around the equator as a ring around Saturn. This is the reason that I have the illustration on the cover of the book. That ring is real. It is even at this moment there and being added to every time rockets, sounding rockets, go skyward and spew out the back the nanoparticles of heavy metals. The same heavy metals that when they fall earthward, we are breathing and are in our blood, our organs, our tissue, and our brain. Thought I'd play a little bit, just a little, of the boasting of Lockheed Martin, my nemesis. I know a lot about Lockheed Martin now, and I like it even less than I ever did. Lockheed Martin owns all the patents for the space fence. Space is no longer a vast, empty void. Unprecedented quantities of new satellites, derelict satellites, and debris litter the skies, posing an imminent threat to America's space assets.
Right in the mic.
Lockheed Martin's Space Fence System is a ground-based system of S-band radars designed to greatly enhance the Air Force space surveillance network. It provides unprecedented sensitivity, coverage, and tracking accuracy, and contributes to key mission threads with the ability to detect, track, and catalog small objects in low Earth orbit, medium Earth orbit, and geosynchronous orbit. In a word, Space Fence will revolutionize space situational awareness. It offers assured surveillance coverage for improved custody and features the capability to develop long arc tracks for accurate initial orbit determination and differential correction, while simultaneously maintaining a persistent surveillance volume. In today's ever-expanding space environment, Space Fence improves the accuracy and timeliness for association, propagation, and orbit improvement. It features an open architecture net-centric design. The closely coupled radar signal processing and mission processing suite improves accuracy, discrimination, and timeliness for detection of closely spaced objects, breakups, maneuvers, lost object location, launch, attitude change, and conjunction assessment.
Conjunction assessment. I'm not going to play the whole thing. It takes a whole 6 minutes, and it's just endless boasting on what the Space Fence is. Yes, from space. It certainly is the things that, if you can read the obscure language and the advertising language of it, and read between the lines, you see that the Space Fence is really there. And it is above the Earth, but it has a very big ground installation infrastructure. And that's really what the book is about, the Under an Ionized Sky. The ground base is important because when I wrote this book and spelled out how the Space Fence was created, near Earth orbit and on the Earth, I had not yet realized how it would telescope down into even more of an assault upon our lives. And that will be coming through the smart city concept of the UN. So this is really crucial. Yes, I've moved beyond the Space Fence, but the Space Fence is what we're living in. And for those who haven't read the book yet, it's really, the Space Fence is straight from the SDI program, the Strategic Defense Initiative of the 80s, and it is the Star Wars program. So now with the ionized atmosphere, the Star Wars program can be taken up again with a vengeance, along with the telescoping nature of a tinier world than the Space Fence concept above the Earth, and even the radar installations, the cell phone towers, the NexRad golf ball looking radar installations, etc., to what I will call, for want of a better term, the smart city. And this is what the next book will be about. It'll be going into that tinier world of the lockdown that we are still subject to. So here's a patent for that ring around the planet, and I'll just read you the abstract of it. A method for modifying environmental conditions is disclosed herein. The method includes the step of deploying a magnetic climate control material to a local area in one of the thermospheres or exosphere. The magnetic climate control material deflects and absorbs rays of the sun. The magnetic climate control material affects temperature of a local area below the magnetic climate control material, and also global temperatures. The method also includes the ability for moving, manipulating, or removal of this ring. So that's what it looks like. And as I've said in other talks I've given, Billy Hayes, the harp man, who was so crucial to me understanding the space fence and how it worked, told me that if he were to say what the ring around the equator of the planet, the metallic, these are all heavy metals, nanoparticles, if he were to say what it was like, he would have said it was like a CD-ROM. So it is very much a recording instrument, but it has many functions, I'm sure. And this is the only thing I've ever seen
Scientists
approximating
have
it.
discovered a human-made barrier around Earth, protecting against the natural particle radiation in space. They believe the bubble was formed by very low-frequency waves, or VLFs. VLFs have been found to interact with the particles in space, affecting how and where they move. VLFs are used for radio communications, including with submarines, because they can penetrate deep into the ocean. The waves can also travel far into the environment around Earth. By understanding more about how VLF transmissions help shape our space environment, we learn more about this complex region surrounding us. The more we know, the more situational awareness we have to protect our satellites from natural radiation in space.
What is that? This architecture, actually this article came out October 3rd, very timely. Lockheed nets $163.9 million to support space-based infrared system. And that's really what we're talking about, is an infrared system. This also includes all the satellites going up that you've heard about. You've heard about Elon Musk's launch of many satellites, etc. This infrared system kind of looks like this. You can look at some of these satellites that are up there. Some of them are geosynchronous, some of them are rotating. You can kind of imagine a web or a net around the Earth from these satellites, from the transmissions, from the radio frequency waves, the microwaves that are used. So we are really encased in a web of influence, you might say. This is another web of influence. This is just a graphic of the smart city that is now here. Some of the smart cities have had a good start, like Dubai. Dubai has been around for years. We've heard about it, about the wealthy Middle Eastern city with everything that a CEO could ever want available. The laws being very lenient and the properties very plush and valuable. So now we're really starting the smart city push big time in America. Cities are getting on the bandwagon under the name of sustainable development. You'll hear that. And certainly my little town, Olympia, is probably not going to be much of a smart city, so-called, but it is also subject to the sustainable development requirements of the UN following the push for carbons. Can you see how this is working? They're using the climate change story and the environmental story to push for a restructuring for the globalization of planet Earth. And I have said before that this all follows from what investment analyst Catherine Austin Fitts calls the secret space program. Many, many dollars, trillions of dollars are missing from our budget And it is possible that they have all been funneled into the secret space program that requires a different form of governance on planet Earth, and the smart city is a very big part of it. This is what it looks like if we could see it inside our smart cities, with all the different radio frequency waves and microwaves going every which direction, and the particulate matter that it takes in order to have such transmission feasibility and fluidity is huge. And these particles that give a way for all these waves to move are being breathed in by us, and they are not good for us. It all started, in a way, back with HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project. I don't know how many are pretty new to this topic in here, but HAARP was a tremendous experimental thrust, and it really produced a tremendous amount of information to the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy and the CIA, which has always been involved with HAARP from the beginning. What they were doing was really zapping the ionosphere with these phased array antennas, and the words phased array antennas will come up again if you do any research at all on the 5G technology. So they learned a lot. They closed it down in 2013. They passed the rumors that the University of Alaska at Fairbanks was going to take it over for just private projects by various scientists who wanted to rent the space and the equipment to do blah, blah, blah. And it was all lies. It is now reserved pretty much for weaponry, as far as I know. And it is quite the weapon, and I'll get to that in a moment.
Chairman, and thank you to all of you this morning. Very interesting. I wanted to ask a couple questions here about HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Several of you at the table have a little bit of a piece here. As you know, this is located up in Alaska. It's currently funded by the Air Force Research Lab. It was formerly funded by the Office of Naval Research. One of the prime customers is DARPA, which is currently running experiments at the facilities here. So questions to several of you this morning. I'm told by the president of the University of Alaska that the Air Force has pulled its support for the facility, and they're taking steps to demolish it or take it down this summer. He's making the argument that there is other opportunities for us, and is trying to find a path where the university might be able to take title to the facility. I'd like to start with you, Dr. Prabhakar. I understand that a lot of folks here on the committee probably don't understand what HAARP does. I think most Alaskans don't really know what HAARP does or why the agency is involved in it. So a very brief explanation, and then a more direct question. Would you be disappointed, or would you lose something if HAARP were to go away?
Senator Murkowski, as I think you know, one of our programs has been using the HAARP facility for the research that it's pursuing. And my understanding is that we did get value out of that interaction. The P in DARPA is projects, and we're not in the business of doing the same thing forever. So very naturally, as we conclude that work, we're going to move on to other topics. So it's not an ongoing need for DARPA, despite the fact that we had actually gotten some good value out of that infrastructure in the past.
Understood. Then to Dr. Walker and Mr. Schaefer then, Dr. Walker, your agency is currently running the facility. I've mentioned that it's our understanding through the president of UAF that the plans are to move forward and demolish the facility this summer. So the question to you is that accurate? Can you explain why? And then perhaps to both you and Mr. Schaefer, is there any benefit in exploring a potential relationship with the University of Alaska to perhaps take over the HARP?
Thank you, Senator. The Air Force has gotten great value out of HARP in the past. We took it over from the Navy and managed it and actually did a number of experiment campaigns up there and have finished our work that we're interested in doing up there. We've moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HARP was really designed to do, was to inject energy into the ionosphere, be able to actually control it. And but that work has been completed. The Air Force has maintained the site for other government agencies to use for several years now. And with DARPA completing their project, that's our last government customer that we have in the site. We have put out a call government-wide for other agencies that had interest in managing the site or taking it over, and including going out to academia and seeing if there was any interest there. We have gotten interest from the university in Fairbanks. However, the interest we have is that they will run it if we fund it, which is unfortunately in this fiscal environment we're in right now, this is not an area that we have any need for in the future, and don't see that it would be good use of Air Force S&T funds in the future.
It's amazing how people can lie with just complete credibility. I can't get over it. But anyway, needless to say, HARP was not destroyed, not dismantled, not really passed over, though all universities now in the United States, to my knowledge, all the big ones, are all militarized and supported by military funding for any laboratory or experimental work they want to do. So I would assume University of Alaska at Fairbanks is the same. So it's up and running. It's still available. I still think of it, even though the site that used to show when it was running is no longer. I talked with Jim Lee about that, and it's been gone for quite a while. I tend to think it's still running for big weather events. I may be wrong on that, but it certainly is used for weaponry. The ability of the HARP Space Lab rocket combination to deliver very large amounts of energy comparable to a nuclear bomb anywhere on Earth via laser and particle beams is frightening. This by Dr. Rosalie Bertel, who's no longer with us, epidemiologist specializing in ionized radiation, author of Planet Earth, the Latest Weapon of War, a critical study into the military and the environment. Here is what I would say the weapon looks like. This is a scalar weapon. It is certainly something you are not taught in high school or college. Scalar makes it quite different from normal radio wave radiation. You can see that it has a point of interference. That's why it's called interferometry. And that point of interference is usually over target areas. And just to give you an idea of the target area, like this, with the scalar wave clouds over Japan just before the Fukushima event. So let's go back and look at it a little more closely. You see there are two sources of the beams. These are beam weapons, and they are transmitting over the interference zone. Another thing to notice, and I'm not going to go into detail, I'm not an expert on it, but I do cover it in the coming book. Notice that it's a bidirectional electromagnetic energy flow. That's very important to establishing, to weaponizing technology, this technology. So This can happen, I believe it happened on 9/11 over Ground Zero in New York. I believe it happens over extreme weather events that occur out of nowhere. And you know, we in the anti-geoengineering movement study these events with great interest and try to educate ourselves more and more about how the technology works. We share stories, we email each other because we're on our own. There is no scientist, to my knowledge, other than the scientist Tom Bearden, who was in the, let's see, what was Tom? Bearden's background: Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army, a master's in nuclear engineering, Georgia Institute of Tech, a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics, graduate of Command and General College Staff, U.S. Army, graduate of Guided Missile Staff Officers Course, etc. And this is from Chapter 2 of Under an Ionized Sky. With an understanding of electrodynamics, Tesla weapons, like the HARP howitzer, would be seen for what they are. They are hyperspace weapons. People would understand how the quantum potential in nature can be built and steered by using a modified Whittaker electromagnetism to implement David Bohm's hidden variable theory of quantum mechanics. They would learn how HARP passes scalar waves through matter and dislodges the target from space-time itself. I want to make sure you get that, so I'm going to read that sentence again. They would learn that scalar waves hearken from the same realm as the antimatter that CERN is attempting to access, passing scalar waves through matter and dislodging the target from space-time itself. Do you understand that? It's the scalar waves, which are also called ground waves, actually are not subject to space-time. So this makes it the ultimate stealth weapon. And this has been achieved. This is not something in future tense. They would learn that scalar waves hearken from the same realm as the antimatter that CERN is attempting to access. HARP howitzers disintegrate soft tissue and destroy every living cell until the body falls like a limp rag, but does not decay, not even for 45 days. The right frequencies pulsed on scalar waves can be made to influence thoughts as well as physical functions like vision, glands, and musculature. So what am I saying? And the very beginning of Under an Ionized Sky is dedicated to 9/11. I'm saying that the dust that the firemen had to wade through at Ground Zero in New York City was due to the disintegration of cells, and that would be human and other cells of other structures. So this is a technology that it would be good for us to understand, even though it may seem daunting, because it sounds like sci-fi, that it's not even in space-time. But the more I read about it, the more I can make a mental picture of how it works. And that's really all we need. We do not need the experts who are all under some sort of pressure to not speak and not share with the public. We do not need to wait for someone to explain it all to us. All we need is to be able to know enough that we can form a good visual picture, mental picture of how the technology works, and you can adjust it over time as you learn more. This is the very same thing I do. That is exactly how I work. And it's quite an exciting proposition, because a lot of people don't talk about how you can do intellectual work without seeing the smoking gun, finding the dead body in the library, and you know then who the criminal is and what they have done. No, you can do this another way, but you have to be able to concentrate and really hold it dear to your heart that you are learning a piece of the truth, and it will reveal itself in clearer and clearer mental pictures. This is how I work. So we saw that. This is a perfect illustration of what is happening in the skies, the harmonic resonance manipulation. So there we have another picture of how the particulates in the atmosphere provide the grist for the mill, you might say, of radio frequency and microwave radiation, wireless. I'm going to show a few pictures of I just would like you to become a little familiar with how the electromagnetic spectrum can be interpreted in a variety of ways. We, as you see there with this very small a bit right here, right up here, this is our visual field that is now optically available to us, while all of this and this is not visual for us. But now we have the instruments by which all of these different levels of radiation, ionized and non-ionized, can be detected. And this, unfortunately, is being used for power and not for teaching the public how not to endanger themselves and their children and their grandchildren. So it goes. Here again, to memorize these, some of them, like 1 hertz, these definitions, 1 cycle per second, go to kilohertz, 1,000 cycles per second, megahertz, 1 million cycles per second, 1 gigahertz, 1 billion cycles per second. As you know, the 5G that we're all frantic over now is in the gigahertz, 30 to 300 gigahertz. And this is deadly for us. And then finally the terahertz, 1 trillion cycles per second. Can't even wrap my head around that at all. But that will be 6G, that is already beyond the drawing board stage. And then I always love to show this because this is a great film, and please don't miss it. Write it down.
He's about to make
It's just a bit from it.
That should have changed everything. His name was Winifred Otto Schumann. On the day in question, he was teaching his students about the physics of electricity, how a sphere within a sphere can create electrical tension, and subsequently a frequency. Schumann's class had struggled to understand the subject, so to make it easier, the professor instructed them to imagine the Earth as one sphere and the ionosphere as another. He then asked them to calculate the tension that would exist in between. Having no idea himself, Schumann also began to calculate. Eventually, he arrived at a frequency of approximately 10 hertz. As incredible as it seemed to Schumann, our planet had a pulse, a measurable frequency that surrounded life on Earth. Although the professor was proud of his find, he didn't see it as a hugely significant one, especially as it was only published in the Science Journal, confined to the back pages, under the heading of Schumann resonance. It would take several years, and an incredible twist of fate, before the professor would begin to realize the true importance of Schumann resonance. That twist of fate had begun 30 years earlier, with another German scientist by the name of Hans Berger. Using an EEG machine he had built himself, Berger had made the first ever recording of electrical frequency transmitted by the human brain. It was initially suggested the wave be named after the man who discovered it, but Berger, being a modest man, elected for an alphabetical name and called it the alpha wave. Shortly after Professor Schumann's discovery, one of Hans Berger's colleagues, a man named Dr. Ankermüller, happened to stumble upon a bedraggled copy of a small scientific journal. The exact same small scientific journal that Professor Schumann's discovery had been published in several years before. He read the piece several times, shaking his head in disbelief. He realized instantly the magnitude of what was in front of him. The frequency of the alpha waves, recorded by Hans Berger, were almost identical to Schumann resonance. The frequency of the Earth. Dr. Ankermüller immediately contacted Schumann to convince him to investigate further. Schumann agreed and worked alongside one of his students to refine his discovery. They studied in detail how tension is discharged by lightning in the Earth ionosphere cavity. Eventually, they came up with an exact frequency. The pulse of the Earth, Schumann resonance, was exactly 7.83 Hertz. The discovery was remarkable. Schumann resonance wasn't just similar to the alpha waves of the human brain, it was identical. The brain's frequency, which controlled our creativity, our performance, our stress, anxiety, and our immune system, had somehow tuned in to the frequency of the planet. The pulse of the Earth had become the pulse of life.
So this is, I can't stress enough how important this is. We are resonant creatures, you and I, and everything around us resonates in our bodies, in our brains. So if indeed the frequencies of the Earth are being weaponized for military, industrial intelligence operations that are very important to the military and scientists, understood, this creates a problem for us, particularly if this is being done under a cover of extreme lies. So this is why we should be concerned. I hope you will see this film. It's really wonderful. I've seen it several times. So we know this, verse, chapter and verse, I'm sure. We've seen this for at least 2 decades. Now all of us who follow these flights and argue over jet fuel versus supplementary systems, etc., we're all pretty much on the same page now. It is certainly jet fuel pollution, but it is also doctored and spiked with a variety of chemicals for a variety of agendas over various geomagnetic areas. This is a distribution system. I can easily say that now. This is not just that we are collateral damage of an operation our government feels is worth damaging its citizens for. This is actually a delivery system of a variety of chemicals with many heavy metal nanoparticles, and that we are breathing it in is well known to the perpetrators. Rocket fuel is also part of this. So we have the jets, we have the rockets flying, and also part of the delivery system, particularly for the ring around the planet, but for other operations as well.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff, count 1.
So just to give you a bit of a visual with that. All right, this is by Billy Hayes, the harp man, the person who helped me, pointing me in directions during the Space Fence book. Around the world, installations in service to the Space Fence are all digitally calibrated to one another. Digital wireless technology in an atmosphere constantly ionized by conductive metal nanoparticles is turning our soil alkaline and our oceans and blood acidic. The conductive aluminum nanoparticles falling from the sky and being drilled into the earth are for military industrial intelligence agendas of control. So then here you can see from the formulae, even if you don't remember how to say them, like the barium nitrate plus the aluminum oxide plus the iron oxide and oxygen is very similar in the spraying coming from the jets, is very similar to what is used in the oil well casings prior to fracking. And it is also similar to the sounding rockets fuel as well. So it seems, given that this fuel is classified, I've said this many times, we've tried to get the formulae for commercial and military jets, and it's impossible, as the jet fuel, whether it's biofuel or not, is classified. So we don't know all that's in it, but some things have been determined, such as these. This is from the HARP report. I very much respect this person. He does really good research. Let me see if I can figure out how to operate this. But here he's talking again about the chemicals that are in the fuel.
Bromide, only +5. Potassium, how about potassium chlorate, +10. You'd have to have 19 tanker jets to get the same cooling as one tanker jet of aluminum trifluoride. This is a gigantic discovery right here. This explains why we are being so horribly poisoned by this white haze in the sky. Now for heating, there aren't any superstars like the other one. Aluminum chloride, cheap, and it has a -80. Aluminum sulfate, -77. So these are your two main candidates, because iodine is, number one, a heavy atom, and it's expensive. And none of these others have a high value of heating. So this caused me to look up in the Sigma Aldrich Handbook of Fine Chemicals, how toxic are these things? If they're being sprayed by thousands, maybe thousands of tons every day, how toxic are they? So this is the STAR, aluminum fluoride trihydrate. And the X means it's harmful or irritant. R is their risk statements, and it's 22 through 36, actually 22 through 38. So here they are printed. Harmful if swallowed, toxic if inhaled, toxic contact with skin, toxic if swallowed, contact with water liberates toxic gas, highly inflammable acids liberate toxic, very toxic gas, danger of cumulative effects, causes burns, irritates the eyes, irritates the respiratory system. And then there's a safety statement, 26. It's just rinsing your eyes. So that is a bad chemical to have falling out of the sky. But a lot of people have these symptoms just from being outside in this white milky sky. So let's look at the, that's the all-star. Nobody can even come close to 188 kilojoules per mole. So the next one, aluminum chloride. Again, it's a, this one has a different symbol, it's corrosive. The risk statement is 34, causes burns, but it has a lot of safety statements, 28 through 45, and then 7-8. So it's very toxic if swallowed, liberates toxic gas, flammable, danger of cumulative effects, causes burns, irritates the eyes, irritating the respiratory system, danger of very serious irreversible effects. Well, that's nice. Nice to have something like that falling from the sky. Risk of serious damage to eyes. Limited evidence of carcinogenic effect. So there's only limited evidence that it causes cancer. May cause sensitization by inhalation. Gee, that sounds familiar, okay. May cause sensitization by skin contact, risk of explosion. May cause cancer. There we go. Aluminum chloride. And then the safety, the other safety statement is 7-8, keep container tightly closed and dry because it's hygroscopic. So now let's look at aluminum sulfate. You know, all three of these are really cheap chemicals. You know, the Aldrich catalog shows you can buy aluminum trifluoride for, I think it was, $100 for like 2 pounds or something. That's phenomenally cheap for a reagent. Aluminum sulfate. Again, it's harmful or irritant. The risk profile 37 through 41. Irritating to the respiratory system, irritating to the skin. Danger of very serious irreversible effects. That sounds nice. Limited evidence of a carcinogenic effect. Limited evidence that it causes cancer. Risk of serious damage to eyes. The safety statements are 26 to 39. In case of contact with eyes, rinse immediately. Okay. Take off your contaminated clothing. Don't let it touch your skin. Don't pour it down the drain. Oh, don't even have a static discharge. Really, it's that flammable. Dispose of the container carefully. Wear eye and face protection. Do they tell anybody to wear eye and face protection when they're spraying it over the Pacific, I wonder? Because I haven't heard that. So if any...
Okay, that gives you an idea of 3 chemicals, and you see how he's working. He doesn't have the formula for the fuel, but he can go to old books. You can't, the new ones, unfortunately, have been altered. So you go to the old books and you look up what was going on then before the publishers were colluding with the cover-up. And then he can tell by the numbers. I mean, that's how we all work, because we are not allowed to see the classified documentation for this technology.
Bromide.
So here are, I've shown this many times, it's just to remind you, these are the 7 operations, 7 operations of geoengineering that are going on. They all have a different agenda. It's not just weather. It is chemical electromagnetic as well. It's planetary and geophysical operations. And I would like to say that the chemical and the planetary and geophysical operations seems to me, besides the fact that they are really working to manipulate the ionosphere to charge, build, and steer storms over and around Earth regions, and utilize droughts, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes for environmental modification and disaster capitalists who want to profit from these events, earth harvesting for real estate investment trusts, sun simulation and solar experiments to harness the power of the sun. Besides all that, I often wonder if the fires going on in California are part of the planetary and geophysical operations for real estate deals and for a future of using the state of California for other purposes by driving out residents. I think it's very much a geoengineering operation, is what I'm saying. Then there's directed energy weapons, warfare operations, surveillance and neural operations. I'll talk a little about that. Biological transhumanism operations, detection and obscuration of exotic propulsion systems, which we do have. We don't have to import ships from Alpha Centauri to realize that we now have very exotic propulsion systems. The XB, I can't remember what it is now, XB-42? It has a number, is only one, and one of the more conservative ones, which can operate in space. So this is a graphic of, I don't like it much, but I can't find another one. The aerosols from the jets are supposedly bouncing global warming back up into space. The cloud seeding done by industry and nuclear stacks are feeding that system as well. And then you see the space mirrors at the top right here. This is a matter of using barium. It's not necessarily actual mirrors up there. It's actually the role that barium plays and why we're breathing that as well. And then we see forestation. So far, I only hear they want GMO forestation, not natural. So many trees are being cut down and burned. And then ocean iron fertilization. Sometimes iron gets dumped into the ocean in order to further the iron content. Here's the first drawing, very childlike looking, I realize, but it's really the old system where the sun shines and then the water evaporates and goes up and makes clouds, and then we have nice rain come down to replenish the water. All of that is gone. It is no more. This is what we have. This is the artificial cycle of water. And it has to do with the jets. You see the jets over here flying, dropping deposits of water and aerosols, and all of it forming this murky cloud cover that we all know so well. And then particulates coming down here and making another lower. Once I was on a jet and I counted 7 layers of chemical trails as we went up. So that's our condition with our weather and the cycling of water, which now is chemicalized. Delivery system, so I'm just repeating what I just said, except that I'm going to add there's 2 other delivery systems I haven't talked about, which are the GMOs and the vaccinations. They are both delivery systems. Here is yet another, I just want to show that non-ionizing radiation in the megahertz and gigahertz, here going up to beyond microwaves to infrared radiation, and then you see our visible. This is our visible. In a way, I feel like this is unfair, that we can only see so little. We have to use our minds and our learning in order to go further and understand what's really going on with all the different frequencies that we're being targeted with, basically targeted with. And over here we have the mobile phone, the microwave. The microwave here is would be certainly 5G and other things. Radio, smart meters, Wi-Fi. Okay, so all the non-ionizing radiation. We can't see it, So we have to teach ourselves how it works and how to protect ourselves in our homes and our communities. We have to do this with our brains and with our will to learn what is being done to us and not wait until our health is collapsing. It's not the time to just wait until things get bad and then fix it, because it won't get fixed. The doctors either don't know or are already colluding. Here's our city, our smart city. Notice all the pulsing going on, boom, 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 everywhere, all the different radiation. This is how it is. You can't see it, but you can learn that it's there. This book came out in, This book came out in 2019, I think. Zuboff, Shoshana Zuboff. Surveillance capitalism unilaterally claims human experience as free raw material for translation into behavioral data. Although some of these data are applied to service improvement, the rest are declared as a proprietary behavioral surplus, fed into advanced manufacturing processes known as machine intelligence, and fabricated into prediction products that anticipate what you will do now, soon, and later. Finally, these prediction products are traded in a new kind of marketplace that I call behavioral futures markets. Surveillance capitalists have grown immensely wealthy from these trading operations, for many companies are willing to lay bets on our future behavior. This is where we pass the line to transhumanism. This data on us is through the surveillance on your internet, your phone, your behavioral practices collected by your smart meters. The Internet of Things is certainly gearing up to collect more data. Big data is big money, and we need to know this. I'm not standing up here saying I know how to stop this. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we need to know it's going on, and that this is the surveillance capitalists, the disaster capitalists, whatever you want to call them. They're making money off of information about our lives without any consent to collect that data, okay? This is a human rights violation beyond belief, but that doesn't mean that there's any teeth in that law to stop it. So here is, our beloved James Corbett telling us about how this really is very organized. Let's see if I can get this to work.
Time. To be sure, the power that these technologies give for agencies or corrupt groups within those agencies to destroy the lives of targeted individuals is itself a fitting answer to the question of why government surveillance should be troubling to us. But beyond what can happen to specific targeted individuals in such a scenario is a much larger question. What if this data, our emails, our phone calls, our credit card transactions, our social media posts, our cell phone GPS logs, and all of the hundreds of other pieces of data that are admittedly being collected on us each and every day, were being fed into a database so gargantuan it contains a digital version of every single person on the planet? And what if that database were being used by the Department of Defense to wargame various scenarios, from public reactions to natural disasters, to the likelihood of civil unrest in the wake of a declaration of martial law? Remarkably, this is precisely what is happening. It is called the Sentient World Simulation. The program's aim, according to its creator, is to be a continuously running, continually updated mirror model of the real world that could be used to predict and evaluate future events and courses of action. In practical terms, that equates to a computer simulation of the entire planet, complete with billions of nodes representing every person on the Earth. The project is based out of Purdue University in Indiana at the Synthetic Environment for Analysis and Simulations Laboratory. It is led by Alok Chaturvedi, who in addition to heading up the Purdue lab also makes the project commercially available via his private company, Simulex Inc., which boasts an array of government clients, including the Department of Defense and the Department of Justice, as well as private sector clients like Eli Lilly and Lockheed Martin. Chaturvedi's ambition is to create reliable forecasts of future world events based on imagined scenarios. In order to do this, the simulations gobble up breaking news, census data, economic indicators, and climactic events in the real world, along with proprietary information such as military intelligence. Although not explicitly stated, the very type of data on digital communications and transactions now being gobbled up by the NSA, DHS, and other government agencies make ideal data for creating reliable models of every individual's habits, preferences, and behaviors that could be used to fine-tune these simulations and give more reliable results. Using this data, the SEAS laboratory and its Sentient World Simulation offshoot are able to create detailed, operable, real-time simulations of at least 62 nations. The Iraq and Afghanistan computer models, according to a 2007 register report on the project, each has about 5 million individual nodes representing things such as hospitals, mosques, pipelines, and people. At the time of initial reports on the program 5 years ago, there were only 62 country-level simulations being run by the US Department of Defense. These simulations grouped humans into composites, with 100 individuals acting as a single node. But already at that time, the US Army had used the systems to create a one-to-one level simulation of potential Army recruits. The ultimate aim would be to archive enough data on each individual to be able to make a computer model of everyone on the planet, one that could be used to predict the behaviors and reactions of every single person in the event of various scenarios. The program could be used to predict what would happen in the event of a large-scale tsunami, for example, or how people would react during a bioterror attack. Businesses can use the models to predict how a new product would fare in the market, what kind of marketing plans would be most effective, or how best to streamline a company's organization. The original concept paper for the project was published in 2006, and in 2007 it was reported that both Homeland Security and the Defense Department were already using the system to simulate the American public's reaction to various crises. In the intervening 5 years, however, there has been almost no coverage at all of the Sentient World Simulation, or its progress in achieving a model of the Earth.
So this could be even more nefarious than it seems if your avatar is being created in a virtual world that reflects this world. What could happen to you to perhaps change you? Perhaps your avatar could be programmed in a certain way, and that, because it's always a double loop that goes on in these weaponized programs, then it comes back to you and you think it's your own thoughts. Maybe the thoughts are very awful and you don't normally think that way. Maybe you suddenly find yourself changing in ways that there's nothing in life going on that can account for it. These are the things, believe it or not, that we need to become aware of, because the technology is here. It's not tomorrow, it's not a maybe, it is already here, and targeted individuals are contacting me right and left to explain what's going on with them. Okay, so let's just keep that in mind. This is the SWS, the Sentient World Simulation. Very important.
Time.
Okay, and there's my drawing, but he did the same. And I put down at the bottom the thought of one targeted individual. SWS allows an individual's consciousness to be cloned onto their very own digital avatar in a sentient world simulation on a supercomputer. A direct link between a targeted individual and their digital avatar exists, so that everything done in the real world occurs in the computer simulation. I won't go through and read all these. Let's just read the top. Again, this is all about getting our terms set up so that we remember them. Radar means radio detection and ranging. TTWS means through the wall surveillance. HPM, high power microwave. GPR, ground penetrating radar. The radar spectrum is the part of the electromagnetic spectrum with frequencies from 3 hertz to 3000 gigahertz, or 3 terahertz. Microwaves are part of the radio frequency range of the electromagnetic radiation spectrum. Microwaves are a form of electromagnetic radiation with wavelengths ranging from 1 meter to 1 millimeter, with frequencies between 300 megahertz and 300 gigahertz. Radar technology is the only technology that can locate, lock onto, and track a target using radio waves. It finds you by detecting you, then tracks the direction you're going in. And then they have radar guns. I won't read that. Let me just make sure I covered it. Radar is a motion and direction sensor, but instead of measuring in miles per hour, radar guns are micro motion sensors that pick up heartbeats, breath rate, and speech behind walls. Increase the power density, or as it states in the US Navy article, increase the intensity with radio frequency radiation or high-powered microwave, and it will hurt, vibrate, burn, and tear up bodies. And this is happening to many people now for no obvious reason. So optical fiber cable, I wanted to read what I've written so far in the book, because a lot of people think that if we just got fiber optics, we'd be golden. Everything would be fine. It's the fact that this radiation is going through the air that is our problem. I don't think that's true, and here's why. Radiation traveling beneath our sidewalks and streets instead of being broadcast through the air may actually make it easier to access our minds. Cortical neurons fire signals picked up by an amplifier. The signals are converted into optical data and pulsed along the neighborhood fiber optic cable to be converted by repeaters to electrical signals and then binary data for analysis by what I call the laptop boys. This hidden aspect of fiber optic cable was clarified for me by Seattle lawyer Karen Dobson. She's in the Under an Ionized Sky book, by the way, in the late 90s. When Karen fled to Mexico to escape the FBI-directed energy targeting she was undergoing, and this was because she had wrongly been perceived to be watching a CIA drug shipment program in Newport, Oregon, after the Clintons entered the White House. They had moved their drug operation from Mena, Arkansas to Newport, Oregon. And Karen's aunt had given her a very nice little beach cottage, and she went down to take a rest, and the FBI did not realize that she was not there as a lawyer to observe this operation, and they began to target her, and it went on for the rest of her life. I actually assume she's dead now. I've lost touch with her. So Karen fled to Mexico, and she wrote, "The reason I am not nearly so ill as I was made to be in the United States is only the lack of fiber optics in Mexico and their ability to use a dedicated satellite for pulsing me every 30 to 90 seconds as if I were a radio tower. This is probably what grounds the right foot and makes holes and burns in the bottom and sides of it." Through MCI and the privatization of Mexico's power and utility companies, bought up by US interests, of course, Mexico, whose citizens by and large have no phones, pagers, beepers, much less cell phones, will welcome fiber optics throughout their states by the end of the year 2000. This is not because it is needed or economically profitable. I think rather it is for use in the fashion that it has been used on me. The directed energy weapons Karen experienced in 1999 were much less sophisticated than the arsenal they are using 20 years later, and still all the operations remain unknown. With fiber optics, DEWs, directed energy weapons, can be run through electricity and phone cables and through your 60 hertz wiring in your home. HARP-based DEWs, Doppler for VHF weapons, amplifies ELF and ULF waves. Phased array antennas are great for targeting. Ion laser cooling tubes used with building ventilation equipment really works well for targeting. Infrared light for night viewing is used by most people who target perpetrators. Handheld equipment for rural, airplane, and rest areas. Microwave guns that look like handheld hair dryers. So then Karen's final words on this were, avoid fiber optic cable, a tool for eavesdropping and harassment. In November 2019, just this month, Verizon announced that with optical sensor technology and artificial intelligence software, they can collect data from any point along their fiber optic network, as it is just one big sensor. As Glenn Welbrock, Verizon's Director of Optical Transport Network Architecture, Design and Planning, put it, it's different from most point sensors that can only sense one particular spot, and I can't really change it. Here I can measure anywhere along the fiber optic cable. So I just want to be clear that I don't see it as a remedy at all. It's just part of the system. There's another picture of it. You can see with these little fibers, these, every one of those little fibers can be used for multiple operations, multiple, hundreds of operations. So you see what a great thing it would be for targeting an entire community. Smart meters, we all know how evil they are. I hardly need to spend any time, but I need to point out their role in the IoT, in the Internet of Things. The smart meter is the gatekeeper to the smart home or the smart business IoT. In August 2018, the Federal Appeals Court in Illinois ruled that under the search and seizure Fourth Amendment privilege, not a right, it's called a privilege now, it was reasonable to assume that smart meters facilitate government searches every 15 minutes, given that smart meters pulse 928 megahertz through every home 60 hertz grid in their quest for data. Smart meter range is 30 miles with 50,000 microwatts per square meter pulsing emissions. The smart meter has been classified by the World Health Organization as a 2B carcinogen. When I think of smart meters, I think of how it is basically a breaking and entering device spying on energy use and home business presence thanks to time of use, TOU. Legislation is designed to enforce smart meter installation, and when they are installed, energy use rises, as do inflated rates and utility bills. Smart meters communicate with IoT devices thanks to their 1 watt Wi-Fi transceiver and 4G to 5G connection to the cell network. And the data collected is sold off to private corporations as the gate is left open for cyber attacks and hacks. And the remotely triggered smart meter fires, what are we to make of them? In 2013, freelance journalist Jim Stone claimed the following regarding a detailed diagram produced by microprocessor manufacturer ARM, that appears to have been removed from the internet. I couldn't find it. The ARM diagram shows 3 wireless connectivity options per smart meter, plus an ability to communicate through the power system, as well as RAM, ROM, and flash, complete with an Ultra DMA hard drive, controller, and 5 CPUs total. It's a safe bet that such extreme connectivity and CPU power, plus 3 memory operations, could only be needed for nefarious purposes. If your refrigerator is Wi-Fi equipped, a ridiculous radio frequency polluting waste, when it could simply receive commands through the wiring, your refrigerator, microwave, you name it, could also be equipped with this memory device. Audio and visual surveillance capabilities, and it could also have the ability to remain perfectly hidden, all to be transmitted out through the smart meter. Okay? Okay. So here we are with a simple graphic. 4G on the left, 5G on the right. You see the targeting capability of the 5G that is really not in the 4G. And this has to do with the IoT. This has to do with the Internet of Things. They're going to want access to the cars. They're going to want access to the homes, to the cell phones, to the sensors along the street. The sensors are now being buried in the cement and in the roads for when the electric cars come, is what we're told, but I think it's something else. So let's learn about how the IoT works in the smart city, whatever your city is, whether you live in a small town or you live in a large city. Everything is being armed, and that would be the word I use in the book, is armed. I won't read this. So let's look at a few towers, because they're getting smaller and less conspicuous, so I can't stand up here and tell you I know exactly what they look like. I really don't. But I have a few examples that have been recommended to me. This one in Piedmont. This one, I don't know what city. And here I thought I would take a departure to wake you up. Given you a lot of facts. I'd like to try something else. You see, I have this theory that it was not my theory. A lot of people have said it. In fact, I think Einstein is the one most people think has said it, but I have found out on the internet that probably he didn't say it, but somebody said it. And that is, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. Okay? Right. So let's accept that as true. No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. We have a lot of facts. We have a lot of data. But what we're really bad at as Americans, I find, is really putting it together in a context that speaks to us as whole beings, not just our intellect, not just our mind, our wanting to seem scientific, our wanting to seem objective. We need a new type of thinking, and I'm not saying that what I'm going to read now is it, but I'm saying I think it's a palliative, I don't know that that's the right word, but what it's doing is it'll rock us up a little bit. It'll jar our conditioning, that the only way to understand what's happening is through facts and figures and scientific objective data. No, I think something very dramatic is happening now. And we're going to need to be firing on all cylinders. Though I hate to use a machine metaphor, but hey, so it goes. All right, so let me just, I'm going to read something that has to do with the towers, certainly has to do with the 5G. And I will be discussing 5G in the third book pretty extensively, because it's taking us to another level. That millimeter wave level is not entirely in this space-time dimension. It's in another dimension as well. And it's affecting our minds. Anything that affects the human mind, you're talking quantum. You're talking another parallel dimension of some sort. So, the upsurge of irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, Crohn's, etc., may be easily explained by diet or bad eating habits, but given the plethora of invisible electromagnetic frequencies invading our energy bodies, think acupuncture, think Kirlian photography, think chakras. We're more than just meat packages, or as the CIA calls us, wetware. We are more than wetware. But given the plethora of invisible electromagnetic frequencies invading our energy bodies, there might be other causes outside the Western physician's domain. Even neurogastroenterologists are observing that anxiety and depression don't so much cause gastric problems as follow from them. The gut-brain axis is indeed an energy highway. Thanks to our microscopes, we know about the microbiota, but do we yet have the instruments that can detect other travelers entering the solar plexus, or what the Japanese call the hara, which is a gateway. Hara means gateway. Given that both epilepsy and autism spectrum disorder have both been linked to the gut microbiome, each condition having very specific neurological symptoms indicating some sort of shutdown of the individual's personality or consciousness, perhaps with our growing awareness of the role that invisible frequencies play, we should fan out a little further from the strict Western medical model toward Eastern and folklore references, even occult references. Consider this description. Changes to host microbiome composition coincide with neurologic changes affecting behavior, neurotransmitter levels, stress response, and gene expression in the brain. Compare this with this description from my Sub Rosa America, A Deep State History book. As for stomach clairvoyance, the solar plexus, the cecum, or stomach, sends out not only infrared heat waves, but the entire light spectrum. In ancient days, the cecum was known as the monocle, the one lens glasses, the monocle of the large intestine, the seer of the body, the gut reaction that could issue a warning the bowels could understand. Gut waves are weak, and yet, according to radio astronomer John Pfeiffer in his 1956 book, The Changing Universe, the 50-foot aerial at the Naval Research Laboratory in Washington, D.C., can pick up radio signals coming from a stomach more than 4 miles distant. The body being like a radio tower, and the stomach area a major beacon. All somatic cells are electromagnetic resonators capable of emitting and absorbing very high frequency radiation. And because the nerves governing the stomach and duodenum issue from the solar plexus, the third chakra, those who are psychically manipulated or attacked often have stomach problems due to their solar plexus receiver. According to Arthur Girdham, MD, in his book Obsession, Psychic Forces and Evil in the Causation of Disease, 1972, Rapid emptying of the stomach coincides with being drained by others on the same wavelength. During the early days of Artichoke, that's MK Ultra, CIA and military intelligence doctors learned from the Nazis and other Satanists how to teach alters to enter the body through the solar plexus stomach area. Bouts of excruciating stomach pain, sometimes cramping of the legs and feet, often indicate entry. Both the stomach and legs have corresponding etheric acupuncture points. One of the calf muscles is even named gastrocnemius. Sleeper assassins like Sirhan Sirhan, Mark David Chapman, and David Berkowitz all complained of severe stomach pain, as did country singer Tammy Wynette. In 2000, Daniel Bondison fed arsenic to parishioners at the Gustav Adolf Lutheran Church in New Sweden, Maine, saying in his suicide note, "I had no intent to hurt this way, just to upset stomach, like the churchgoers did me." And in the jailhouse letter of Jesse Miskelly, after an act he swears he didn't do, he says, "My stomach has been hurting me." How a neuronal matrix can radio in through the solar plexus receiver and take over one's body and personality is a complex proposition that defies mundane analysis. The CIA used narcohypnosis to produce deep trance agents who could pass for normal and remember nothing. That the stomach is tortured during this mysterious transmission and transformation is a fact. Long ago, the shamans of Central America referred to virotes, invisible psychic darts that were implanted over distance in an enemy's stomach. Pharmacia drugs can act as virotes too, and open access through the solar plexus. So secret is stomach clairvoyance that Western accounts of the bloody rites of the Aztecs in the final demise of their civilization were revised to read heart incisions instead of stomach incisions. How do I know that? I visited the Guggenheim Museum and studied some of the sculptures and saw that it was not the heart that the priests went for, it was the stomach. So that's just a little bit of a different way, isn't it? You know, and if you discount it and dismiss it immediately, you really should look at your conditioning and really reconsider what kind of conditioning you've bought cheap from those who really don't want you thinking on those levels, because those are the levels they think on. He who controls the electromagnetic spectrum on Earth controls the living things on the surface of the planet. Jack Kruse, neurosurgeon. There's the millimeter waves. We know that's 5G. Here's the terahertz and 6G. Because yes, we're moving up to the terahertz now. Notice that the terahertz is very good at plasma oscillation, intermolecular vibration, intramolecular vibration. You suppose the 6G is really about penetrating deeper into our bodies? No, they wouldn't do that. And here's David Petraeus. One wonders what his destiny is all about. Items of interest will be located, identified, monitored, and remotely controlled through technologies such as radio frequency identification, sensor networks, tiny embedded servers, and energy harvesters. all connected to the next generation internet using abundant, low cost, and high power computing. Yes, this is where we are now. This is what's going on constantly, though you are probably not aware of a lot of it, would be my guess, because you don't understand what it would look like. Understandable. Now I'll kind of hearken to the past, the very famous As Above, So Below by Hermes Trismegistus, a very esoteric law that is coveted by esotericists, of which we have many in the secret space program. We remember this. May have looked ridiculous to many of you, but it definitely sent a message to some of the more esoterically minded brethren who are making a fortune off of our ignorance and abuse. It's like Sauron, right? And of course they fed us that as fiction, right? Pre-programming, fiction. Lord of the Rings. Fun fiction.
This is what they look like. There are two of them.
Geordie Rose.
These are from our lab in Burnaby in British Columbia.
D-Wave computer.
From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths. Big metal boxes. About 10 feet on a side, 12 feet tall. And they are powered, they have a fridge inside them, a refrigerator that cools these chips to almost absolute zero. Just a wisp, a fraction of a degree above absolute zero. Hundreds of times colder than interstellar space. Amongst the coldest and most isolated and extreme conditions that humans have ever been able to engineer. These fridges, interestingly enough, which are called pulse tube dilution refrigerators, have a thing called a pulse tube, which emits a sound roughly once per second, which sounds eerily like a heartbeat. So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. They really are impressive machines.
Was he using a metaphor? No, I don't think so. I think he had a true experience by the D-Wave, because if you examine the D-Wave, and you know who does that the most is Anthony Patch. Anthony Patch is my CERN go-to guy. CERN has a D-Wave, as does Google, Facebook. All the big boys have this adiabatic quantum computer, which I'm sure will be bypassed at some point, but that it was an altar to an alien god, and that I just showed you something about stomach clairvoyance, that every esotericist who believes in alien gods, who believes that AI is going to somehow patch us in to a superior state of consciousness, all of them are following a thread that you have been taught is nonsense. That you have been taught that a true scientist would never spend any time on it, despite the fact that John Dee, the great physicist of Queen Elizabeth I, was a practicing alchemist. So Geordie Rose points us in a certain direction, and I'm with him. I understand. He had a religious experience next to the D-Wave, and the D-Wave can only operate at not just sub-zero temperatures, but sub-zero as in colder than outer space. And that speaks volumes to me. Okay, here's David Deutsch. Quantum computation will be the first technology that allows useful tasks to be performed in collaboration between parallel universes. So now we are in a realm which you may not understand. It may It may seem incredible, and it probably should, but it's not incredible to me. I've spent years studying Rudolf Steiner. I've spent years reading esoterica that has to do with very elite globalists. And I understand, I think, what they're going toward. They're heading toward their great alchemical dream of a transformed humanity. This is from philosopher Nick Bostrom at Oxford University. Transhumanism is a loosely defined movement that has developed gradually over the past 2 decades. It promotes an interdisciplinary approach to understanding and evaluating the opportunities for enhancing the human condition and the human organism opened up by the advancement of technology. Attention is given to both present technologies, like genetic engineering and information technology, and anticipated future ones, such as molecular nanotechnology and artificial intelligence. The enhancement operations being discussed include radical extension of human health span, eradication of disease, elimination of unnecessary suffering, and augmentation of human intellectual, physical, and emotional capacities. Hey, sounds great. Wow. And you just have to undergo maybe some sort of procedure or what? So other transhumanist themes include space colonization and the possibility of creating super intelligent machines, along with other potential developments that could profoundly alter the human condition. Profoundly alter the human condition. The ambit is not limited to gadgets and medicine, but encompasses also economic, social, institutional designs, cultural development, and psychological skills and techniques. Oh, you mean like sustainable development and smart cities? And remote wireless control over the brains of populations? I'm sure he means that. Transhumanists views human nature as a work in progress, a half-baked beginning that we can learn to remold in desirable ways. Current humanity need not be the end point of evolution. Transhumanists hope that by responsible use of science, technology, and other rational means, we shall eventually manage to become post-human, beings with vastly greater capacities than present human beings have. In the 2011 book, Transhumanism, a Grimoire of Alchemical Agendas, Joseph P. Farrell, PhD, and Scott D. DeHart, PhD, look at transhumanism through the ancient lens of alchemy and the ancient alchemical pursuit of transforming humankind. Quote, if all this sounds about as far removed from modern social engineering or the genetic manipulation of man's food, it is not. For this basic alchemical view, we believe, is also capable of being reduced to a crassly material form. And the people that took this approach was a very famous, or depending upon one's lights, infamous, bankster family, the Rockefellers. They were the very first to invest millions of dollars in the transhumanist movement. So that's for the people who often say to me, well, what is transhumanism? It is a philosophy that is well on its way and doing very well with the younger generations because they have been conditioned to it by television, their cell phones, etc. All right, Palantir, another corporation to keep your eye on. What is a Palantir? A Palantir is another esoteric term, and it means a fictional magical artifact from J.R.R. Tolkien's fantasy legendarium. A Palantir, sometimes translated as seeing stone, but literally meaning farsighted or one who sees from afar. The Palantir Corporation analyzes big data. Here's another term, another mythical term, and you know the military uses mythical terms all the time for their projects and their programs. There's something about that, about drawing on the collective unconscious, deep in us, all those myths and legends and fairy tales and everything down deep in there. Artemis, virgin goddess of the hunt. Mass sterilization. I mean, there are people who think that this particular antenna is actually broadcasting a frequency that will stop eggs from developing in females. And then there's the Ebner effect. Electromagnetics can alter a species in one generation. And here we are, all our parts of the body and all of our illnesses and all of our symptoms and meanwhile if we go to the doctor, we'll get a diagnosis for maybe one of the things, and he'll make it sound, she will make it sound like a disease, but it's really a symptom of an electromagnetic radiation style of life that's going to kill us slowly, so people can make money off of us while we're dying. Okay? And yet, I love it. Hey, I'm on the internet. Well, I'm not on the internet right now, but I mean, what do we do with this technology? I mean, writing books is a dream for me now. I don't have to retype and scratch with a razor blade with the old carbon paper. Remember, you who are older? I mean, it's not evil. It's not evil. It's the use. It's the use and abuse that we haven't been paying attention to as our masters have set it up for us. Transfection. Well, there are all kinds of synthetic biology names of methods now, and those are in the third book. Like CRISPR. CRISPR is genetic editing, or as transhumanists like to think of it, genetic enhancement. Then there's 3D printing. You can 3D print an organ that you need, or skin. Need some skin? 3D plant, get it? Uploading our minds and consciousness to digital clones, avatars, in the sentient world simulation. Yes, and this is transfection, which is the process of introducing nucleic acids into cells. Sounds healing. Sounds like it's good for healing. But healing is the cloak of darkness under which all of this science has been done. And I'm sorry to say that I don't see a whole lot of healing going on. It seems that there are other alchemical objectives being sought. So transduction is often the term used for the virus-mediated DNA transfer, whereas the transfection is for bacteria-mediated DNA transfers. So to be able to, as with the genetic editing of CRISPR, and now to be able to insert into the cell an altered bacteria, basically. It's how genetically modified organisms like GMO foods and the Morgellons pathogen, the cross-domain bacteria, are accomplished. This is how it's done, is with transfection. Just like the transfection of DNA into cells in culture, that's in vitro, transfection into living bodies, like ours, in vivo, depend upon magnetism. By applying magnetic force, the full nucleic acid dose is rapidly drawn toward and delivered into the target cells, leading to efficient transfection. Well then, if I don't go to a clinic or a hospital, well, they can't magnetically insert it into my cells remotely, can they? Oh yes, they can. Because you have magnetite in you. In fact, they've recently discovered that there is an amazing amount of magnetite in people's brains. Where did that come from, they're asking themselves, scratching their scientific heads. Well, I'm sure someone knows, and my guess is it's nano-sized, and we're breathing it in. So, it could be done remotely. Is that what I'm saying? I think so. In the YouTube Matra Weapons, Magnetic Assisted Transfection, Ron Johnson makes the case for how Matra might be made to work on a mass scale for transhumanism. Well, what a great way to get the transhumanist thing going. Do it en masse. Do it through the environment, the altered environment, the weaponized environment. Yes, this is a great idea for some. For others, it's a bad idea. Here's what Ron says, always with great gusto. There has been another discovery about these weapon cell towers. There have been numerous patents for nano-sized weapons that are triggered by the same electromagnetic waves that these towers produce. This type of weaponry is called Matra weapons, consisting of nano-micro capsules containing DNA or chemicals for transfection, capsules smaller than dust that can enter your cells, then release DNA or chemicals that can turn you into a GMO, a genetically modified organism. So now instead of modifying your vegetables and fruits into GMOs, they are turning people into GMOs. These nano-micro capsules can be delivered into populated areas by chemical trails, car exhaust, pesticide smoke, water systems, or in any liquids. People will then breathe these nanocapsules in or drink them or rub them into their skin and eyes. Then these capsules can be activated through the electromagnetic waves that these cell towers produce. These nanocapsules contain DNA or chemicals. With this type of bioweaponry in place, a virus outbreak can be faked for a specific neighborhood or city, or even race or gender. And no one would ever know how it happened. Yes, I think so. Matra, process of aerosol dispersion and olfactory uptake, nose of aluminum encapsulated nanoparticles containing RNA, siRNA, weaponized RNA. Cyclotron resonance or high power Wi-Fi, microwave energy is the catalyst that opens the ionic plasma cell wall membranes, permitting weaponized RNA to recombine with healthy DNA. Cyclotron resonance also fractures healthy DNA, creating an ideal biological environment for spontaneous recombination. I mean, you know, while I'm doing this book, I'm overwhelmed. Can you imagine? I am absolutely overwhelmed. Because I'm reading a variety of things. I'm showing you just a smattering. Yeah. So epigenetics, yet another approach, the study of changes in organisms caused by modification of gene expression rather than alteration of the genetic code itself. If the biological short-term memory of nature resides in junk DNA, it may well be targeted by transhumanists. One more method, one more approach. Optogenetics specializes in the light properties of DNA. This approach might outshine everything we have learned about transhumanism. Once it is possible to modify a bacterium in a way that it functions as a radio-controlled light bulb, collectively creating living plasma screens, implementing these sequences into the human genome to access the light body, the etheric body, will be next. Scientists, this just came out. Scientists discover signaling circuit boards inside body cells. Did you know you have circuit boards in your cells? Is this getting us ready for thinking of ourselves as machines? Yes, I think so. I think so. That just came out. Okay, electronic brain stimulation, EBS. Here's Elon Musk stuff. You see some of those are mesh electronics, mesh, neuromesh. Yes. Could Morgellons be like this? Yes. Yes, it is. It's very much like this, actually. Voice to skull. You hear a voice in your head. Is it yours? Is it your conscience speaking to you? Or is it some guys on laptops sitting somewhere who are working for a video game corporation like Amazon? Well, you're going to have to discern that, aren't you? You're going to have to really develop your discernment. You have a religious experience? You had a spiritual experience that was tremendous? Was it your experience? Or did it come from Langley, Virginia? You're going to have to develop discernment. Synthetic organisms and living machines. Gosh. Abstract. The difference between a non-living machine, okay, non-living, such as a vacuum cleaner, and a living organism like a lion seems obvious. The two types of entities differ in their material consistence, their origin, their development, and their purpose. This apparently clear-cut borderline has previously been challenged by fictitious ideas of artificial organism and living machines. And that is a term that's used a lot now since the nanotechnology took off. Living machines. So anyway, that's it. Go on to the next one. I'm always such a bringer of delightful news, aren't I? I just can't believe my good fortune in life. I always have good things to say, make people happy, make people filled with hope. And thought-controlled nanoscale robots in a living host. Oh, wait a minute, that's me. I am the living host. Gosh, okay, abstract. We report a new type of brain-machine interface enabling a human operator to control nanometer-sized robots inside a living animal by brain activity. Recorded EEG patterns are recognized online by an algorithm, which in turn controls the state of an electromagnetic field. The field induces the local heating of billions of mechanically actuating DNA origami robots tethered to metal nanoparticles, leading to their reversible activation and subsequent exposure of a bioactive payload. As a proof of principle, we demonstrate activation of DNA robots to cause a cellular effect inside the insect Blabberus discoidalis by a cognitively straining task. This technology enables the online switching of a bioactive molecule on and off in response to a subject's cognitive state with potential implications to therapeutic control. Therapeutic, yes, always therapeutic. It's healing. In disorders such as schizophrenia, depression, and attention deficits. Oh yeah, attention deficits, gotta get those kids in the classroom. Which are among the most challenging conditions to diagnose and treat. Yeah, right. Okay. So here, I won't go through this. This is from Tony Pantalaresco, who is pursuing remedies for people infested with masses of heavy metals on a nanoscale and other things on a nanoscale. Tony sent me this. This is, you can go to your market. I think I've said this before many times. I have a little 60 power microscope I bought for $7 on the internet. It's fantastic. I can go to a grocery store, go to the organic section. I eat only organic, but except when I eat out, of course. And turn it on, turn on the little LED on it, and take a peek at the organic fruits and vegetables. And you will see millions and billions and trillions of fibers on them. Okay. You can wash them in salt water. It might help a little, but I doubt that it's going to do everything. Now I'm going to whip through this because I want to make sure. Ooh, oh dear. Is it 8 o'clock?
We have the room till 9.
Okay, but you know, I don't want people to have to be carried out of here.
Yeah.
Okay, environmental fibers. Let's just look at some of these. Rainwater in Colorado, fibers. Magnification, 1500. Magnification, 5000. Now you can see into it. It's diaphanous. You can see into its innards. You see its nodules. 150 times. This is in someone's skin. Obviously, they're suppurating. And this is probably, this looks like Morgellons. Here's Harry Rhodes, wonderful British guy. He's experimenting a lot with Wilhelm Reich's orgone cloudbusters. I know Harry personally, great guy. These were removed from the skin of a member of my group. Note the hexagon nanotransmitter receivers connected to the fibers. Zoom in on the hexagon structures and you can see how they are organized and connected to the fibers. It is critical to know what I am about to tell you. These AI materials are manufactured with polymers. The black fibers were completely dissolved in 15 hours using my latest treatment. Everybody's experimenting with lots of treatments. This 100% organic natural material dissolves the polymers on contact, and when taken internally, it dissolves it from the inside of your body. So he also, like Tony Pantelleresco, is pursuing remedies. Self-replicating nanowires, Morgellons. Okay. This is sputum from an individual coughing for months. You see, the lungs filled with fibers. Down in the alveoli, at the very bottom of the lung, where these tiny capillary thin tubules called alveoli are. You know, you need that for your circulation, for breathing, everything, loaded with fibers. I like this one. Friendly looking little guy, isn't he? Just wait, though. He's probably not friendly. These are your axons and dendrites is what he's going for here. That's how he's programmed. Oh.
Wow.
He's taking them over. He will replace them. This is how Morgellons works. You see the tightening, the squeezing. They're engineered to do that. Do you think it was by accident? Of course not. Okay, so now telling you what you already know now. What has happened is that genetics has become a branch of information technology. It is pure information. It's digital information. It's precisely the kind of information that can be translated digit for digit, byte for byte, into any other kind of information and translated back again. This is a major revolution. I suppose it's probably the major revolution in the whole history of our understanding of ourselves. And then Richard Feynman, understatement of the century, if you aren't deeply disturbed by quantum mechanics, you clearly haven't understood it. Once we go to the nano level, as I understand it, we are in the quantum realm. Because the nanoparticle realm, as I say in the Under an Ionized Sky, simply does not behave naturally. It doesn't. It's a swarm mentality. It's a hive mind mentality. They have an intelligence, but it's a collective intelligence. Smart dust, I'm going to whip through this too because you know about smart dust. This one on his finger is way too big. They're much smaller than that. This is old. Neural lace, you see what it looks like. Neural dust. There are the gems and NEMS. These are the mechanical electro sensors. And sensors, where are they? There are trillions in this one room. I promise you that. Trillions. They're everywhere now. And they're relaying data. They're all relaying data. That's what they're made for. They're dropped up in the upper atmosphere and they come down here. We breathe them. They're all over the place. Here's some things people are getting out of their skin. The Morgellons victims. Quantum dots. Quantum dot tagging is used for the military and prisoners so that they always know where they are. Dusty plasma is another form of smart dust.
But in the future, every square inch of every city will be alive with intelligence. Because every street and every building will have a network of microcomputers built right into them. Dr. Chris Piester calls it smart dust.
A smart dust particle or mote is a wireless sensor with sensing, computation, communication, and power in one package.
These all-in-one microcomputers will be small, very small.
The size of a mote today is about the size of a grain of rice.
Much smaller.
And we've shown that we can make the circuitry small enough and light enough that eventually it will be possible to make things that are on a sub-millimeter size scale.
Tiny specks of computer smart dust will form a vast invisible network that can help manage the infrastructure of even the largest city.
Smart cities in the future will take this low power, inexpensive, small technology and basically distribute it everywhere.
These tiny computers record information about their surroundings, information they can send to other computers or to you. Smart dust on the tracks will monitor your commuter train so you know if it's running late. Potholes will be able to report themselves and warn your car, and you'll never have to wait for a radio traffic report again.
They're monitoring the flow of traffic and giving you alerts about what route is the right way to go to keep the traffic moving.
Bridges will get a coating of smart dust particles that can warn us when they detect stress fractures, helping avoid deadly collapses. But smart dust will also allow buildings and streets to recognize you and respond accordingly.
Friendly.
Increasingly, the environment will respond to who we are and adapt in consequence.
The city will know where you are if you want it to.
Your workplace will know you. Smart dust at the entrance will boot up your computer. And smart dust embedded in the elevator doors will automatically ring your floor.
Smart dust is going to sense the environment and allow us to improve the way that we live our lives.
No matter how we live in the future city, it will be radically different.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, then all these are nanos. This is a microprocessor. This is a nanoscale abacus. Let's see. This is carbon-60. Parallel nanowires with silicon. Fullerenes. Oops, I like the fullerenes. They look like snowflakes. Lab on a chip. Hey, got your own labs going in there somewhere. This is Jan Smith was a Morgellons survivor who finally died, and she found fibers that look just like, well, like electronic wires, yeah? I mean, golden-headed fiber. And how about this? It looks like a circuit board to me. Yeah. And then there are the lovely insects that come out of the lesions in Morgellons survivors. And they look like they're genetically insects, and they've been implanted somehow in the body. Okay, that's as far as I'm going. You don't get to have the cloud. I've got lots of clouds, but hey, you see clouds all the time. All right, and my final word, though I can't find it now because it's on the floor somewhere, is what was my new motto? You can't solve a problem with the same kind of consciousness that created the problem. We have to search deeper and wider. Yes, we do. All right, thank you very much. I wanted to show this to you. If you want to come up and photograph it for your own use, you can. These are some recommended sites. And then I wanted to tell you that I have an essay in a book called Global Warning, not Warming. And what is the name of it? Wait, I have to look at something. See if I can go to this one. Let me just check the title and then you can go to there. Yeah, geoengineering is wrecking our planet. It's European women. I'm the only American. There are a dozen of us. They all teach, I think, at universities in Europe. I'm the lone maverick, writing books, not teaching. Should be good. Though I think they're more conservative than I am. Hard to believe, but. Questions? Anybody?
Oh, I
yeah.
So with knowing this and knowing how they're attacking people who can sense it, what are some of the remedies? Like if we're working on an energetic basis and multidimensional, so we, knowing that information and being able to sense it, can work on our own skills. So what are some of those skills? Because that's part of the writing with Blavatsky and Ledbetter and Steiner. I mean, they were aware of all of that.
Well, yes. I think what I'm hearing you say is not the Tony Pantalaresco way of herbalism and various magnetic devices. He's got magnetics. They seem to be extremely sensitive to magnetics, and it drives, a magnetic field can drive them straight out of the body. Okay. But you're talking about the consciousness, and that is hugely important. I mean, we the masses, we are living in a mass society. We are the masses. We have been used and exploited for many centuries. This is not the first time. But we have never really tried consciousness as a tool, as a way to defend ourselves. And that is definitely, I definitely know, and how I know is not from data, it's from probably just spending so much time on this in the last 9 years, is if you have your consciousness, you know, let's take the consciousness most people have, which is, you know, go to the store and get a quart of milk, pick up the kids, make sure you've got the rent at the end of the month, this sort of thing, because we're strapped, we're stressed, we've got bills, we're in debt, we've got, you know, it's set up so that this is how it is. That's not the consciousness I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about putting cute visualizations around your house of, I think I'm wonderful. No, I'm talking about the ability to really hold thoughts. And as I said to you earlier about the mental picture, the ability to make a really good mental picture. It takes concentration, it takes imagination, it takes true effort, that you realize that ideas are not just ephemeral nothing, that really only the material world really exists. Ideas come and go. They're just ephemeral. They don't last. No, ideas are where I feel my enemies in this technology, that's where they thrive. They are in a quantum level. They have access to quantum levels of ideas that you and I don't have. And does that mean they've got it locked up and sewed up? No, not at all. They know they can access that. Now, not all of them can. They have their golden boys. They have the ones who really can reach into those dimensions and pull out amazing... Tesla. I mean, my gosh. The guy was, you know, a lot of people don't even think he was human. He was so gifted. We can do this if we put the effort in, and that's the key to how we are controlled as slaves, is we immediately assume it's a numbers game, that they've got the money, they've got the weapons, we've got the numbers as a mass of people, but try to get anyone to join your group or your effort. I mean, it's not going to happen. So that's why I say, really, that's why Rudolf Steiner has had such an impact on me. He taught me how to do this, how to really take hold of ideas and move into where they live so that I can feel them. I mean, they are real. They're real. And if I can just access them, who knows what will happen? I mean, that's what I'm doing public education for, is to carry that good news. But I mean, I can't tell you how to do it, step one, step two. You're going to have your own adventure. But it is an adventure. And it's completely accessible. We don't need the right formula or the right algorithm to get into that realm. But what we do need is love. Love for humanity, that we're at the point where I don't think the future is assured for the human being as we have been. I think that there is danger there. And so that's why I'm working so hard, is I want people to have free will. And if they choose to be a couch potato, so be it. But they will decide that themselves. I do not want to be all remotely controlled through our brains as slaves. Even slaves who don't even know they're slaves, who don't even know they're being controlled. That's how good this technology is. It's already there. Auto-targeted individuals are going through this. A lot of people are targeted and don't even know it. So yes, we have our challenge. We have our danger quotient. Every era has one. Think of the Inquisition in the 1300s. You would be in fear and trembling every day. So this is our challenge. And I don't think there's a person in this room who didn't choose to be here for this. I really don't. I think you came, you knew you were coming to incarnate at this time in this incredibly exciting and dangerous transition from one style of life to a completely different style of life. And as far as the machine goes, to blame the AI on the machine, as Steiner says, human beings are going to have to deal with their machines. We've always had machines. We've always had technology. We're going to have to learn to deal with it, and there are many bright people who've gotten a head start over us. So let's get busy. And I'm not saying go out and wave signs. That's not my activism. Writing letters to congressmen, nope, I don't do any of that. I know it may work in some cases, and I'm very happy for people to do that if they feel from the heart that they need to do that. Far be it for me to say it's hopeless. I mean, this takes consciousness is what it takes. And we all share that. We don't need to get together in the same room and say a prayer together or meditate together. We carry that consciousness. I mean, a lot of people carry me, and I know that. They write me. They care about, they don't even know me, but they know my ideas, and they love my ideas. And so that's kind of what I want to lead people toward. It's a very exciting thing. Yeah, okay, I'm intellectually gifted and I'm educated and all that stuff, but I'm putting all those talents to awaken people that we need everybody in on this. We've got to concentrate on getting the ideas and seeing clear mental pictures of how this technology works so we can defend ourselves. Okay? That's good? All right.